Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the exact post-production blueprint used to transform raw student projects, things like flat screenshots and a simple voiceover track, into a highly professional tech startup-themed cinematic showcase. Specifically, we're diving into a project titled the YIIC 7.0 Journey, created by a student named Navam. So if you've ever wondered how to take really basic visual assets and elevate them so they feel modern, inspirational, and honestly deeply emotional, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's just dive right in. We're going to deconstruct this whole process layer by layer. We'll start by locking in the cinematic blueprint, then move on to visual motion and compositing, automated captioning and sync, audio and sound architecture, and finally, we'll bring it all together with a full scene-by-scene breakdown. All right, kicking things off with this cinematic blueprint. Every truly great piece of visual storytelling requires a highly structured foundation. So let's lock in those technical constants first. Now, these aren't just arbitrary numbers. These are the rigorous baseline specs that can literally make or break your final product. We're talking about full HD, 1920 by 1080 resolution, locked perfectly into a classic 16:9 widescreen format. And we run all of this at exactly 30 frames per second. Why? Well, because this guarantees super fluid motion graphics and establishes a rock-solid professional standard for playback across the web. On top of that, we maintain a visual pace where the image transitions happen every 3 to 5 seconds. This keeps everything feeling really energetic without giving your viewer visual fatigue. To nail that inspirational, modern startup aesthetic, the entire project leans heavily on a very specific color palette: deep blue, pure white, and these really soft purple glows. And while technical grading standards like the Rec. 709 color space definitely come into play here, what matters most is the feeling it evokes. These colors subconsciously signal technology, innovation, and just an overall professional polish to the viewer. When you keep this color grading consistent throughout the whole video, it creates this beautifully cohesive, branded universe. Moving right along to visual motion and compositing. Honestly, this is where the real magic happens, turning those flat, static assets into a living, breathing experience. 'Cause let's be real, you absolutely cannot just slap a static screenshot on a timeline and call it a day. That's why we use the Ken Burns effect to gently guide the viewer's eye. Now, you can forget the complex math formulas for a second. It's really all about providing that slow, cinematic zoom and pan. It gives the imagery a constant, subtle forward momentum, instantly transforming a completely static website image into a dynamic environment. And we inject serious life and faux 3D depth into these images by layering in specific compositing elements. By bringing in things like purple particle shockwaves, abstract blue light streaks, and those awesome floating UI cards, we instantly generate this deep, high-tech atmosphere. It basically takes a flat, two-dimensional web design and turns it into a tactile, engaging experience for the viewer. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about automated captioning and sync. Because these days, captions are not optional. They're absolutely critical for accessibility and making sure your message actually lands. Our creative blueprint specifically requires adding automatically synced subtitles and seamlessly correcting the grammar. To pull this off, creators are turning to incredible AI tools like Descript or Capwing. And while it's amazing that these platforms use automated speech recognition to spit out subtitles in seconds, here's the catch. Manual review is always necessary. You have to go in and make sure the technical terms are perfectly spelled and that the text aligns flawlessly with the visual rhythm of the video. Now, to ensure those subtitles are perfectly clear and compliant with standards like WCAG 2.1, it's a great practice to pace the text between 120 and 160 words per minute. And whatever you do, utilize standard 16:9 action safe zones. That is the best way to guarantee your perfectly crafted captions don't get covered up by a random YouTube or TikTok interface element. Keep that clear narration front and center. Let's dive into audio and sound architecture. Sound design is basically the invisible thread that gives your entire presentation its emotional weight. The absolute core requirement here is ensuring the narration remains totally clear and dominant at all times. To hit that perfect balance, the audio is mastered to a strict standard, specifically -24 LUFS. Whether you use that exact measurement or a similar technique, the goal is always the same. We want to prevent any digital clipping, normalize the speech volume, and make sure Navam's voice sits perfectly and comfortably above the soft, inspirational background music. And remember, the music and sound effects actually dictate the pacing of our visual transitions. We source these soft, corporate, yet inspirational background tracks from libraries like Storyblocks or Foxy Music to create this hopeful undercurrent. Then we bridge the visual cuts with very subtle sound effects, like a light cinematic whoosh or an air zoom vacuum for the UI entries. These tiny auditory cues literally trick the brain into feeling the movement on screen. It adds so much polish. All right, the final piece of the puzzle, the scene-by-scene breakdown. Let's see how this whole blueprint actually builds into the 5 specific scenes of Navam's finalized timeline. The logical flow of this video is beautifully simple. It moves chronologically right through the student's journey. It kicks off with a really strong introduction, then moves into showcasing 3 specific technical projects, the LinkedIn profile, an AI portfolio, and a showcase video, before wrapping up with a warm, highly emotional conclusion. Scenes 1 and 2 set the tone right out of the gate. Using Navam's actual script, "Hi everyone, I am Navam. I was recently a part of YIIC 7.0. We pair that with the best introductory image of the campus, framed by abstract tech particles and a soft, glowing background. The cinematic fade-in just works beautifully here. Then we whip directly into the first project. Our first project was creating a LinkedIn profile through which we could build connections. Bam! Professional, social media-themed motion graphics and floating UI cards slide right into view. So, moving into scenes 3 and 4, the pacing actually speeds up a little bit to match the energetic vibe. Navam explains, our second assignment was to create an AI-generated portfolio, which helped us learn how to build and deploy a website without coding. Here, we dive straight into website previews layered with futuristic coding and AI-themed visual effects. Next, slick cinematic transitions reveal a dynamic grid collage of teamwork images. Right as Navam says, our final assignment was to create a video showcasing all the activities and projects we worked on during the last month. And then we reach the ending, which is where the emotional core really peaks. The pace slows way down, and Navam says, I would like to thank Disha Mom and the entire YIIC 7.0 team for giving us this opportunity. At this moment, that energetic grid collage gently cross-dissolves into a beautiful slow-motion montage of the best moments. A warm, glowing animation takes over, the background music swells up perfectly, and a soft cinematic blur fades everything beautifully to black. It's amazing what happens when you systematically apply these visual specs, right? By utilizing dynamic motion graphics like the Ken Burns effect, and keeping your sound architecture hyper-focused on emotional clarity. You can totally transform flat, everyday imagery into an absolute masterpiece. You now have the exact blueprint to make literally any complex topic visually captivating and totally unforgettable. So, I'll leave you with this. How are you going to elevate your next project from a simple presentation to a highly engaging cinematic journey?